Welcome back. No Mark Willard this week. He'll be back on Monday here on Willard and Dibs. It's Dan Dibley and Mark Grandi with you. Talking a lot of Niners at training camp. It is an off day for the Niners, but they are 7 practices in, gearing up for the first preseason game coming up in, 9-10 days? You got the first official preseason game of the NFL season tonight, the Hall of Fame game between the Bears and the Texans. And to continue the discussion on Niners training camp, we go out to the guest line, which, of course, is the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands? River Islands in Lathrop. And standing by on the River Islands guest line is none other than Larry Krueger. Larry, hope you're enjoying your off day from Niners camp. How's it going?
Anytime I can be brought to you by the banks of the mighty San Joaquin, the Boathouse Restaurant. I mean, it's an incredible experience. Good to be with you, Grandi, Dibs. Good to see you guys. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, Krugs. I love the old tagline out there, River Islands, $1 million living for half the price. That's what we used to go with out there for the islands.
There you go. Yeah, and don't forget, there's K through 9 schools are constructed and they're ready for you.
Yeah, the high school actually is opening as we speak, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
You're locked in, Larry.
Well, he's trying to one-up me on River Islands, but yeah, many great ball fields.
Yeah. Islanders. They're playing baseball down at Islanders Field, I believe, out there.
Of course, of course. Yeah, and you can you can get out on your deck on the banks of the San Joaquin River and just bask in the glow and the goodness of the better part of Lathrop, Larry.
There you go. The mighty San Joaquin.
Thank you.
All right, enough of this. Let's get to Niners training camp. Larry, we saw a video. It popped up on social media yesterday. It's been all over the place, all over certain television talk shows. We've been talking about it a little bit here on 95.7 The Game. Brandon Aiyuk, dressed in all black, walking on the practice field, dapping up John Lynch in an enthusiastic dap and hug with Kyle Shanahan. So many of us thinking, this might be a sign that there's some progress made on a contract extension. Any reason for us to be excited, or are we reading into this too much?
I think we're reading into it too much. I mean, you got to think of it this way, Grandi. The two most dialed-in football people in the world are probably Rap Sheet for the NFL Network and Schefter for ESPN. They both are reporting that a deal is not imminent. So what was that? What did we see there? And I'll tell you, I don't know. I don't know if that was a hug of, hey, we've climbed a major hurdle in the negotiation and the rest is just dotting I's and crossing T's, or if that was more like, hey, you know what, we're going to move you on somewhere else. And I hope for the Niners and their fans that they're getting this deal done and he's not moving on. But if I was wagering based on that video, I would say there's a very good chance he's traded. That would be my thought. Just because John Lynch gave him a quick handshake. You just signed this guy potentially to a $30 million a year deal, and he's one of your foundation pieces. And if you're going to win a Super Bowl as an executive, he's going to be one of the major reasons why. And all he gets is the quick handshake. To me, that was like, hey, you wanted the biggest bag, and I found you a place where we can send you where you'll get the biggest bag. It's all speculation. I have no sources, but that to me looked more like that didn't look like you're going to be here for the next 5 years kind of a handshake to me.
Yeah, but the Shanahan handshake was double pat and much warmer, and we brought it in. And after that exchange, Brandon Aiyuk just went over and sat on a training cart and watched the rest of practice. Wouldn't he, if a deal was imminent, he just would have gone straight deuces a la Chris Brown?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say, if we're doing percentages, right, Dibs, I would say 75-25. He's signing an extension and it gets done in the next 48 hours. That's my guess. But man, that was a very, very brief Lynch handshake. I don't know, man. It made me. I watched that thing several times, and I thought, if you're signing this guy long term, and this guy means as much as this guy means to your chances would you just give him the singular handshake? I don't know. I think I'd be bromance. It'd be more of a bro hug and a kind of a, almost a Roger Goodell draft night kind of a hug.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, at the end of a long, tough negotiation, maybe there are still feelings that would prevent you from totally bringing it in. And, he and Kyle Shanahan probably haven't had any discussion about the deal, which is why I thought that level of warmth might indicate that something would be imminent. But, here in Grandi and I sit at 4:08 on a Thursday, and we're hoping it crosses any minute now, and it doesn't feel like, talking to you, like it's going to happen.
The other interesting angle was, the guy Dibs that is tight with Mike Shanahan is his former offensive lineman. What's his name? Who just Schlereth,
Stinky,
who just ripped the heck out of Aiyuk for his hold in. And it's like if he thought everything was copacetic between Kyle and the Niners and Aiyuk, would he be tearing him up for his hold in? I don't know. That was a very negative comment from a guy who's relatively close to Shanahan's dad, who's obviously very close to Kyle. So, man, I'm not sure what to make of that one.
Larry Krueger with us here on the River Islands guest line. Larry, I know we're so focused on the extension or if he gets traded. What is so bad if he just plays on the fifth-year option? I know some of it is, optics, and you want to continue to take care of your players. The Niners have a very good track record doing that. What is so bad, though, if the Niners just simply say to Aiyuk, sorry, it's timing, you're a victim of circumstance, we just can't give you the contract that you're looking for, but you're too valuable to us, at least for this one season, to trade you. We're going to make you play on the fifth-year option. Is that so far out of the possibility, or could we be headed towards that?
No, I mean, Grandi, I think I think that is the 49ers. If you say what is in the 49ers' best interest, it's that. Play on the fifth-year option. Why? Because if you play on the fifth-year option, you're setting up a one-year Debo Aiyuk competition. You're also putting off, having to make a concrete evaluation on what Cowing and Pearsall can give you. Next year at this time, you're going to know what Cowing is. You're going to know what Pearsall is. You're going to know what they're capable of. And you're going to know what kind of year Debo had. Also, if you do sign Aiyuk to this big money extension and Debo outperforms him, now you've got this real awkward situation where you've got two really popular, very much team leader type guys. One guy who's making a whole lot less money and he's going to be shown the door at the end of the year, and the other guy's making a ton of money and he's not playing as well. So there's dynamics at play here that I think make the fifth-year option in the Niners' best interest. But then there's also, you could argue the other side, that then becomes a distraction. And will there be a lot of people that are upset that you took care of CMC, you took care of Bosa, but you're making Aiyuk play on the fifth-year option despite coming off a 1,300-yard year where he was efficient as heck and did it in fewer touches than other receivers. And you played the 28th fastest pace in the league, so that worked against him. And you've got all these other weapons that dragged on his production, and you're going to hold his feet to the fire on his production when he's delivered handsomely for you. He's not a diva, blocks in the run game. You know what I'm saying? There could be some guys in the room that are a little pushed out of shape if they don't take care of Aiyuk.
I get that. Larry Krueger here on 95.7 The Game. What I'm also starting to understand, though, Larry, is the way teams are going about constructing their roster. And I think about Green Bay letting Devontae Adams go and then drafting tight ends and wide receivers. In Kansas City, letting Tyreek go and getting rid of that huge contract and then drafting young rookie players to play receiver. And I look at the Niners potentially paying two guys at the receiver spot more than $20 or $25 million a year. Is it becoming the new trend in the NFL to pay the quarterback and not pay other skill guys and have them on rookie deals?
Well, what's happened, Dibs, is that, it's okay. NFL personnel people can stomach paying quarterbacks. Why? Because it's a supply and demand deal, and the demand far outweighs the supply. That's no longer the case in the receiver market. The receivers, the last three drafts have been incredibly deep with wide receivers. The trend in the industry is to go spread formation. So there's all kinds of wide receivers entering the draft every year The free agent market is proliferated with tons of wide receivers. So, these guys, people are seeing what the top guys are getting paid, but the demand, the supply is greater. And so that's where teams are saying, you know what, with this kind of supply, I'm not paying Tyreek. And the Chiefs, of course, they had Mahomes, but they've won 2 rings since. And, Green Bay said, we're not paying Devontae. And nobody wanted to pay Diggs. And, you've seen nobody wanted to pay Brown. And suddenly it's, these guys are moving around at a pretty high clip. And it's been kind of a surprise. But that's kind of the reaction to the market has exploded for wide receivers, but the supply is still incredible.
Larry, you mentioned maybe part of the reason why forcing Aiyuk to play on the 5th year could be valuable because it lets you have an opportunity to get to know a couple of your rookies that may be able to fill in for Brandon Aiyuk in the future. They've both been dealing with hamstring injuries, Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall has been back this week, and you've been down there through the first, 7 days of training camp, and I know Pearsall hasn't participated in all of those, but what have you seen from the Niners' first-round pick, Ricky Pearsall, and what impact should we expect from him this season?
Well, Grandy, first of all, both these guys, if you're sitting there, if you're a 49er fan driving around listening to the game right now going, I kind of wonder, can these guys play? Just bank on it. These guys can both play. Cowing can play. Pearsall can play. Pearsall's made some amazing catches already. Him and Purdy already have a tremendous rapport. The guy creates separation with relative ease, and he's got a gliding speed that it's really impressive. Cowing kind of reminds me of kind of almost like an Allen Iverson guy as far as he's small, but he's tough, and he's really, really strong, and his footwork in and out of the breaks is incredible. So both those receivers can really play, but durability is the question mark. Neither of those guys are built like Aiyuk or Debo. So, the only question I have about those 2 rookies is durability. And unfortunately, it's still a question.
Yeah, and it's a question that will be answered here in the next month. And my question for you, Larry, is who's going to be the odd man or odd men out at the receiver position? Because I see a team that's probably going to keep 6 on their roster that breaks camp, but you've got Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell and, not to mention Chris Conley and Trent Taylor. Who ends up being the odd man out of guys who have some experience if they keep both these rookies?
Well, basically the answer, Dibs, is everybody. So it's like this is what you got. You got Debo and Aiyuk and JJ, and you got Cowing, and you got Pearsall, and then you got those 5, and then you probably – everybody else is probably competing for one spot. I would say that the guy that I think's got the edge there is probably Conley. I know that sounds odd because other guys you think of as better, but Conley had a real role on special teams, multiple, as a gunner, and he also played well in the playoffs, had a big catch in the Super Bowl, had a big hit on special teams in the Super Bowl. I think that 6th spot is going to be designated for special teams contributors, and my guess is it goes to Conley.
Larry Krueger with us here on the River Islands guest line. Okay, enough about the guys catching the passes, Larry. What about the guy throwing those balls to those receivers? All these interceptions for Brock Purdy, big deal or no, Larry?
There were people last year that were losing their S because of Brock Purdy and the way he played against the Raiders in Vegas. And then what did the guy do? The guy went on and almost won the MVP. So, definitely nothing. The one thing about this is the time to find out what your limitations are, what how hard you got to throw it to get it in the window. How far can you lead these receivers and they can still make the play? This is where you test your boundaries and your limits as a quarterback, your receivers' limits as receivers. You want to see quarterbacks test those limits. Now, there's different kinds of interceptions. There's the tip into the air that gets picked off the surface, like Fred Warner did the other day on a tipped ball from Yadam. That was just a great defensive play. Then there's I don't have enough arm strength to squeeze it in the window. That's a totally different pick. And then there's the Trey Lance. I didn't see the coverage underneath. I didn't see that defender. I had no account for the defenders. And that's a blatant, terrible interception. So these things have to be kind of evaluated individually. I would say overall, I have zero concern about Brock Purdy's 7 picks here in late July.
When you look at concerns so far through a couple of weeks of practices at camp, what is concerning you? Is it the offensive line with injuries and questions about depth? Where do you look right now as an area of concern here in early August?
Well, it's always hard to know exactly what's real and what's not. But I'm going to start with the run D, Dibs, because you had Armstead. He was probably your best run defender. He's not there. You had Greenlaw. He was one of the best run defenders in the entire NFL. You're not going to have him probably till after Thanksgiving. And then Hufanga is probably your best run defender on the back end, and there's a likelihood that he may not be ready to roll. So you could start this year after struggling to stop the run in the playoffs, struggling to stop the run in the preseason, and now without 3 of your best run defenders, that could be a real problem. So I would say until proven otherwise, run defense is a major problem. The other major problem is Dre Greenlaw is not good. He's not great. He's awesome. And so when you take awesome players off the field, there's a drop-off. And I can tell you just from watching Devondre Campbell, he ain't Dre Greenlaw. So that's a concern.
I'm just going to ask you about a couple other players who have been standing out from what I'm hearing and ask you to either confirm or deny or throw out some others that you think aren't getting maybe the recognition they deserve. And one of those guys is potentially a future replacement at some point for Dre Greenlaw. Hearing a lot of good things about D. Winters, also a couple of rookie defensive backs, Malik Mustafa and Renardo Green. How have those 3 specifically looked in training camp so far, and any others standing out to you that maybe Niner fans don't know a lot about just yet?
Well, Grandi Mustafa is just almost like a comic book. I mean, he has been so good.
Like Mighty Mouse.
I mean, he is. Mustafa was like, he was sent here from planet Krypton, and, this guy is so jacked. This guy's so strong, so quick, so physically dominant. He had an interception 3 days ago, guys. That's one of the greatest individual plays I've ever seen on a football field from anybody in any era. It was a go ball on the right sideline from Dobbs to Danny Gray, who had Renardo Green locked up in one-on-one coverage. And he's playing deep quarter coverage, and he comes over as the safety does. And, sometimes they show up early, and as a penalty, sometimes they show up late, and they can't impact the thing. Sometimes they go for the hit. Sometimes they go for the pick. This guy, Mustafa, rises up in a crowd. All 3 guys go up in the air at the same time. It looked like he was 8 feet in the air. He takes his left arm and just rips the interception away, one arm over both other guys, and landed kind of the way like a cat lands when it jumps down off, or like the way like some guys in the NBA dunk contest land when they're trying to like land and make it look cool. I mean, this guy just landed and like struck the pose, and it was like, what? Yeah. What are we watching? I mean, it was amazing. And Renardo Green is he has just got the temperament that you wish every one of your DBs had this temperament. I mean, he's just a dog. He just wants to fight you, and he's tenacious, and he talks a lot of mess, and he's just, he's in a lot of ways, an alpha. Both those guys are alphas. As far as Winters, Fred Warner told me he's had the best offseason of anybody. To me, I've been watching every practice. Jalen Graham looks so much better than Winters. I mean, Jalen Graham is bigger, faster. I mean, they're both really good young linebackers who are going to play a lot and play well. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not seeing it right. But to me, Winters looks, like as clear. He looks good, but Graham looks great.
It's a great breakdown. And the one day I was out there, Larry, watching Mustafa, and they got him listed at 5'10", 206, and I thought he was closer to 5'9", 230, and he is just absolute all business, the amount of muscle that guy has. It's crazy.
He's got the six-pack abs, and he shows it off. He's such an interesting build that if you see him with his jersey on, he looks like a linebacker. He looks like a guy who wouldn't have the kind of ability to turn and run and cover. But then when you see that how thin his waist is and how, how lean he is in the lower body, how limber, how well he moves. You're like, you know what? This is a cover guy. This guy can play the deep middle. So I think he's interesting because he could play free safety, I think, if they needed him, but he could play in the box and play that strong safety up on the line of scrimmage role if they want him in that spot. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who's at free and who's at strong when they actually start playing these games.
We'll keep an eye on it, Larry. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll catch up with you next time, okay?
Sounds good, fellas. Have a good night.
All right, you too, Larry.